That's one of the things we're gonna talk about today. Culture in the multi-generational workforce and communication and what that clapping, or how I perceive that clapping. We'll talk about that in a little while. So we'll go ahead and get started. Today we're gonna talk about communication, workplace culture, and the multi-generational workforce. Not quite in that order, but that's all right. It's gonna be a fun session. I'm gonna have you guys up moving around a little bit, doing some stuff in teams. Should be good. So where are we in the series? We are 4. Yeah. We're at 4, and that's today. Next week, no training. And then you're gonna go to customer service and dealing with difficult people. And then finish up with emotional intelligence. Another key thing here, this is kind of a good news, bad news situation, depending on your perspective. My last class is today, so my colleagues will take this on. So for me, that's bad news, because I've enjoyed this and I would love to teach you 2 more classes. For some of you, you're probably like, man, we're ready to have somebody else's voice. So good news, bad news. But that's kind of where we are. Any questions at this point? Cool. Again, no class next week, and pick it up June 17th. Then June 24th, and then that'll wrap the series for a while. And we might pick something up later, but that's to be determined. All right. So today we had a welcome, and we're going to do an opening activity called Culture Builders and Culture Killers. Then talk a little bit about communication styles, feedback and listening. Everybody thinks of communication as talking, right? But really, that listening component's another key component to communication. Right? You got to hear that message and then do something with it. We're going to talk about the multi-generational workforce and talk about how that's one way to look and explain an individual's different behavior from yours, right? But there are other things that might explain it as well. So it's not like you're Generation X, so you're going to be kind of sarcastic, independent, probably think you know how to do the job better, but you're not going to tell anybody, and opinionated, right? That was perfect. But that could all be stereotypes, and we'll talk about that and how that's one way to look at and explain a person's behavior, but it's not the only explanation. Right? There are other things that you have to consider. Right? Talk about what's that positive work culture look like, and what does that look like for you guys? Because you define a culture. We're going to talk about that. In particular, remember this, culture is about what happens every day, the behaviors, and what's reinforced every day, right? So that's really culture. So you can have a policy, you can have a mission statement, you have all these beautiful words that say you do all these things, but if you do something totally different that's contrary to the policy, and it's either allowed or reinforced, like rewarded, then that is your culture. So the policies and the missions and all that are kind of like a vision, but you guys create the culture by the way you show up and behave and the way you react to that policy and vision. So, and then we're going to have some scenarios, and then we're going to play Mythbusters to kind of wrap it up. And there might be a myth or two from some of the previous sessions in there. We're going to do that probably in teams and make it competitive, depending on how much time we have. Any questions at this point? All right, a little bit of a recap. It's really your professionalism is an obligation you're representing the South Walton Mosquito District all the time. Remember the SIN test of communications? Anybody want to give me a big quick highlight of what that SIN test involves when you're sending a written communication?
I always say if you can read it in front of a lunchroom, but I know it's not that, but something like that.
Okay, yeah, there you go, in front of a public audience, right, that's pretty much it. Would your supervisor be comfortable with it? Would you be comfortable with it? Would you be comfortable with a third party reading it, in particular a news organization? Or would you be comfortable with it ending up part of a court or public record, right? Again, your interactions impact the way the district is perceived. So courteous professional interaction every day is really important amongst yourselves, but also with the public. Last time we talked about this, when you have a conflict early, try to address it, right? So early before it festers. Directly with the individual, what's the big one there? The other key one, you're gonna do that. If you were gonna tell me something negative, did you do it right here?
No, probably first.
Bingo. There you go. Really don't think about this before it becomes a bigger problem, right? And it becomes where everybody's not talking about issues or addressing issues, and people are upset. You have that like resentment, right? And that'd be one way. And so then that kind of starts impacting your team's culture, right? All of a sudden you're not talking to one another because you have some unresolved conflict, right? That from 3 weeks ago. And this last one, supervisors really kind of set the tone, right? And so when I said that culture is driven by what happens, but also what's rewarded and allowed, that's where the supervisors really come in, right? So just keep that in mind. So that are really those kind of key lessons. Questions or comments, other things you guys have picked up from the workshops. Bueller? Okay, cool.
If you're in a group text, don't put your supervisor in it.
Start, yeah, right. Yeah. Anything else about the group text?
Mindful and courteous and,
Yeah.
kind of watch your P's and Q's and.
Yeah. Maybe use it as a positive, hey,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be out sick today, guys, and that kind of stuff, not Joe's messing up again, and he, didn't show up, and he's breaking equipment when he does show, we don't wanna do that kind of stuff.
And that's where the private comes in first.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, you're spot on, the text is public, right? Potentially.
Yes.
All right, so culture builders and culture killers. So this is where we want you guys to chime in. What are some of the behaviors that build a strong workforce?
Compatibility. Everybody kind of is on the same page, everybody knows what's going on.
Okay. Agreement on what you're trying to do, communication, talking about what you're going to do, listening, talk a little bit more about that.
Willing to do what they ask you to do without questioning it.
Okay, all right. Other things that make a strong workplace, a place you want to show up to work.
Respect.
Yeah.
Fair treatment.
Appreciation.
Okay, appreciation. Does it have to be tangible, or can it be like non-monetary, or does it need to be both?
Verbal.
I think a little both. I mean,
Little both?
if you're in a position where you can help someone make more money, then I think that's a good way to motivate people.
It is, yeah.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, definitely. And no doubt money's important. Sometimes money only goes so far on
Right.
motivation, but take the money away, you'll definitely see a dip in motivation, right? That's something, that's like,
There's leading by examples, management won't have us do anything that they haven't already previously done.
okay, or maybe wouldn't do themselves,
Yes.
right? Okay. Other things.
Trust.
Trust, okay,
Kindness.
okay. So, things like following through on commitments, I think we talked a little bit about everybody knowing what they're gonna do. Trust that individuals are gonna do what they say they're gonna do, so that's something. Communication, sharing information with the team, right, and again, being on the same page. Sharing information builds trust. Listening before responding. You guys probably didn't surface that, but you talked about, I guess, maybe respect, right? I heard the word respect. Think about, if you're telling me something, I need to be quiet and actually listen and hear it, right? And not be kind of like, how am I going to respond to this? Right? So. Helping a coworker without being asked. I think we heard being asked to do things, leaders not asking us to do things we wouldn't do ourselves. We also heard something about helping each other out, helping an individual to earn more. So again, you guys are covering all of these. Credit where it's due, recognition. I think we heard that a couple of different times. And respectful disagreement, and we heard respect. So those are some of the things that build that positive culture, that place that you want to show up. So now let's talk about the culture killers without picking on anybody. What's some things that would kind of like not make you want to show up to work?
Gossip.
I heard gossip, and what were some of the other ones? Negativity.
Weather conditions.
I mean, it's true, yeah. I mean, if it's too hot or rainy or too cold, all of those things matter. Other things is just kind of,
Being singled out or picked on by coworkers or management or whatever.
yeah, we talked about some of those things. Other culture killers.
Racism.
Yeah, definitely. Other stuff, just like, when you're having that tough day, it just might be the thing that you say, you know what, I'm calling sick today. That's something that just might push you over.
Unrealistic expectations.
Okay, yeah, that's.
There's no way I'm gonna get this done, it's not possible.
And that kind of gets back to the opposite of, people said we all being on the same page and knowing what we're gonna do, but also being asked to do things that are realistic, that others, that they would be willing to do as well. So yeah, all really, really great culture killers.
Showing favoritism.
Yeah, another one, right. A lot of the stuff we've talked about, other things that just, make the workplace unpleasant. Or a prior workplace where you worked where you didn't like it. What's some of the stuff that you're,
Dishonesty.
yeah,
Empty promises.
empty promises? Yeah. Okay. So that was the first one. That was the most salient when we heard gossip, somebody, that one. Exclusion, being singled out, right? So you could be being excluded, and that could be a form of being picked on, right? Just exclude you from, don't share information, don't invite you to lunch, don't let you know what's going on. Right? I think sarcasm, and then that's a default response. I perceived the clapping as sarcasm. Probably kind of a healthy, fun sarcasm, but I don't know. What was the clapping about?
It was sarcasm.
Healthy fun.
But more of a healthy fun. Not always sarcastic. Like, when somebody asks a legitimate question, you don't give them this sarcastic response, right? But, if you're singling out somebody and every time they ask you a question and you were sarcastic, that's a culture killer. Public criticism, I think you guys mentioned that, right? This one can be a big one. I worked 20 years at the IRS, and there were people that they did this because they thought it gave them job security. So it was like, and we would say, oh, don't mess with Sally and her fiefdom. Don't ask the wrong questions, don't ask her to do something different. And they would withhold things, right? But they're kind of using that as leverage, right? To have a better place in the organization. But that can be problematic. So it's not always about something you do. Sometimes it's like, I'm just gonna hold back and not share, right? And it might be key information that somebody else needs to be successful. So this can really create a negative type culture, right? Anybody have any stories about how you work around something like this?
So like an individual thing, I mean, it's, unless you talk to them, there's really no way, it's not that, kind of hard.
Open and honest.
And sometimes you have to say, hey, I really need your help. Can you help me out? Can you share some more information? Sometimes you just literally have to find somebody else to help you that has that information. You literally just work around them, right? But that one can really create a negative culture. But if no one's cooperating, it gets back to when you guys said everybody kind of having a common understanding of what we're here to do, right? But if everybody's withholding information and you don't have that common understanding, you also don't have people all working on the same goal. And then I know I didn't say that, inconsistent treatment, inconsistent standards. Other builders and pillars you guys could think
A builder would be transparency.
of. Okay? Yeah. What do you guys think the biggest culture builder is at the district?
Open communication is really
Just
big
being
on.
honest with each other.
Honesty, open communication, other thoughts on that one? It could be more than one, generally it is.
Listening before responding. The listening before
Listening before
responding.
responding. Okay, cool. We're not gonna go down the killers. You guys probably know there's some things you would like to see improved. And there are ways that you guys can work together to do that. Questions about the culture, the builders and the killers. So I also mentioned you can have policies that might say do all of these things, right? But then when they're not happening, but then yet those people are recognized and rewarded in the same way that the people that are doing that, then it's really not part of the culture, right? Or it's not being reinforced. Or eventually what happens is those things stop happening, even though that's what the policy says, that's what that mission statement says, all of those things. So you want these things to be aligned, right? And that's where, and we have the one supervisor here, so I gotta pick on you, sorry. I'm not picking on you, it's just, that's your role, right? You've gotta reinforce the culture builders, right? And the things in your policies and in your mission statements that are gonna help to build a great workforce where people wanna show up and be members. So supervisors have that special role.
Yeah, and the company, the district has the policies and the procedures we're supposed to follow, but as a team, we either build the culture or we kill it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you don't have a good, strong culture, and then you want to implement a positive change, even if you have leadership saying you should do it, right? And you have a policy saying you should do it. If you're not reinforcing it and rewarding it, and you don't have people willing to go, yeah, I'm listening, then it won't happen. Right? So.
I've also noticed if you get like a bad apple in the bunch, it's hard to get someone to come forward and say, hey, this person's causing issues with what they're saying or what they're doing. No one wants to be the bad guy. No one wants to tell on their peer or friend. And so it doesn't really come to light until it's like already like major damage control at that point. And then it's like everyone's already in a slump and it's hard to come back from that kind of stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of that is not doing some of these things and doing
Mhm.
some of these things and letting it keep going and going.
Right.
And then it just kind of can kill the culture. Yeah. I mean, you can literally have, a team of 10, right? Which is 10. And one problematic person. Everybody's here, right? And the one person's kind of here. And eventually, by doing stuff like this, and the sarcasm, the gossip, they drag 2 down with them.
At least,
And then it just spirals out of control.
And it's funny, that one there gets pulled over to the other side, they always pull
Mhm.
several to their side, which is,
It is interesting how that dynamic does tend to swing that way. But on the flip side, let's say you got 3, and you got, 3 on the fence, and 3 that are here, you can work towards getting and swinging it the other way, to the positive way, and then you just kind of takes over. But it can be hard, because that one can just drag you down. Somebody said,
It's the same as social media, I mean, it does the same thing.
yeah.
Negativity wins all the time.
Well, what gets the attention? Like what really ends up getting the most attention?
Yeah, hey,
So you have a beautiful post that talks about the birth of your sister's first child, so your niece, right? And it's a beautiful post, you say great words, and, somebody has to say, well, you didn't acknowledge your other sister's child like this, right? And then that's what sticks.
I have a little baby.
Yeah.
Everybody likes that one.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one that gets engaged. All right, I'm just gonna leave social media alone and just say that phenomenon that you pointed out is probably just not healthy for humans in general. And just leave it at that, yeah. But it gets your attention. It's the one you're like, did you see this? Okay. Other thoughts on killers and builders? Okay. All right. Talk a little bit about styles, listening, and feedback. And I want everybody to read these. And then I want people that feel like they're direct communicators to stand in the front part of the room, on the right, your expressives in the back, kind of like we're configured here, indirects, front, and then reserves, kind of in the back. So take a look at those, and then go stand where you think you're falling. All right. First question, was it easy to choose one?
Yeah, very easy.
Some said yes, easy to say, hey, I'm here. Others were like, no, I'm not sure. Could you prefer one style at home and another style at work? Is that possible? Possible. Anybody want to say my style could depend on the day? All right. And so this is why this is tricky. Anybody here want to be courageous enough to politely tell their employee, I don't see you in that category. I think you should be somewhere else. Anybody want to do that?
No.
Yeah, Brad, you don't belong over there.
So the direct person,
Perhaps he is reserved and we just don't know his full level yet.
all right.
I can fit in both.
Okay.
Multitasking.
So you're moving over, or you're gonna
I
stay
gotta go to
where you
Bible
No,
college.
I think more people belong in this corner
are? Expressive?
than are admitting it.
So you think this group's more expressive than,
I don't know,
Maybe
maybe
they
it's
see
just
themselves.
because I am, so that tends to bring out more talkativeness in people.
Yeah.
I don't know.
okay. That's true, right? You kind of do get what you give. So, other thoughts on these different styles?
So I can pick on myself a little bit on this. So naturally, I'm indirect. I choose to communicate that way, but over the years, I've had to learn that everyone doesn't respond to that very well. So you have to be able to come out of that comfort zone and express things differently than you normally naturally would.
Okay. So there's definitely room to grow there and change, right? And adjust. And that could be like long-term, what you were talking about. It can also be kind of situational.
Yep.
Anybody surprised to see anybody standing where they are? That know each other fairly well.
It's kind of hard to like just pick a side. I mean, you know how you talk. It just changes to person to person. I mean,
Okay, cool. And you're right, it can change from person to person. And that's really a key point.
Yeah, 'cause if you know you can trust somebody, you're gonna act totally different than if you don't. Exactly.
Right? Because once you've built that trust, that culture builder, right? Maybe you're gonna be a little bit more direct about something, right? So also, could you see how thinking about somebody's style, you might attribute the reserved person to being kind of like, they're just disengaged. They're not paying attention. They don't care about what we're talking about. It could just be that that's their natural way of being, right? So, and they might be paying very close attention during on-the-job training, like when you're showing them to do something, and they're following, but they're not the expressive going, yeah, I get it. Now I do this. Now I do that. And so they're not giving that on-the-job trainer that feedback. So that reserve might be misinterpreted as, are they really paying attention to what I'm trying to teach them here? Right? That would just be one example.
Give me a weakness, because I'm weak in that area. So.
What's that?
Being reserved.
Being reserved. You're not reserved. Yeah, and so that can, again, different ways of communicating, like getting to the point quickly. Thinking, oh man, maybe that's a
A lot
little
of times
rude.
I don't think before I act, so then I'm gonna sit back and like, crap, should I handle that maybe a little bit better?
So, couple of values to this exercise. It's one, kind of self-understanding, right? We've heard some of that, how you approach people. But then think about your colleagues and their style. And so one way you might be interpreting their behavior one way when it's really just their natural way of being, right? Some people like to talk a lot. Some are more reserved, right? This one is a struggle for me, the whole indirect thing. But once you figure out the indirect communication style and figure that person out, and sometimes it's the person you get comfortable with, they're really easy to communicate with, but you've got to be able to figure it out, right? And sometimes you're just like, I have no idea what is on your mind right now, other than you seem like you're just so withdrawn that you're upset, right? It's like, no, that's just the way they are. They're just really chill. So, other thoughts about this?
I think I want to work on expanding myself to be less expressive. Because I feel like, I don't know, my natural personality doesn't combine well with work, jobs in general. Not just this job, but, jobs in general.
You're
So-
also young.
That is true.
Don't worry, you'll develop into what you need to. It'll happen naturally.
And see,
So I would like to change less, like,
I'll offer an observation. What I've
don't
seen,
ever change.
your level of being expressive is appropriate, and you smile,
Yeah.
and so you're warm, and so because there's some of that too. Body language matters, because then you have me when I'm in expressive mode. But I might be literally saying, you're doing a great job, and I'm sitting there shaking my head. And I'm giving you mixed signals and all that. Or, in my family, sunglasses probably prevented a lot of fights because you can't see the eye rolls, right? I mean, me and my two siblings, it's like, look out. When somebody's said something that we don't like, you'll get the eye rolls. But anyways, but yeah, just be mindful of it, but I think you're good. And if you think you're too expressive, I'm not seeing that in the classroom. And again, you're warm with it, so, and that's important. So, other thoughts on this?
Each person has their own personalities.
I think sometimes it's who you're paired with, like, I can be more reserved with a direct person, for instance, or expressive.
Yeah, and that can matter. If you think about couples, and anybody that's been married or in a relationship for a long time, have you ever been told, hey, wow, you tend to talk a little bit more when your wife's not around? Or you tend to talk a little less? No. And it's because maybe you're more comfortable talking about that, or there's the filter, right? And you're going to say something, and then that's going to be filtered through that partner. And the partner's well-meaning, because they're like, you're saying something really stupid or rude, and we're trying to, so, that can come up. Or it depends, again, on the group you're with, right?
Like for me, a direct person, sometimes I need that processing time, because they're right there, and I'm like, processing.
There's another really good point. Processing time, soak time. Who's ever been told, hey, I heard what you said, I needed some time, right? And your direction, your expressives, do need to sometimes consider that. Like, hey, I'm gonna let you think about that. Or when you're implementing a change.
Wheels spinning.
Yeah. Or hey, so the direct person tells you about a really positive change, but it's gonna require some effort on your part. The expressive, great, awesome, they're on board. The reserves kind of go in, thinking about this, not sure, maybe I gotta process it, I'm gonna think before I respond. Maybe a little disengaged, doesn't mean that they're not going in their head, they're still processing. It's a very, very good point. And your indirects, kind of giving those body language signals that maybe they're not okay, or maybe they're great with it. Maybe their eyes get a little warm, and that kind of thing. So again, you have to think about your styles and who you're working with, right? And think about how everybody processes differently. Right? So. And then on the flip side, the indirect person might take too long for the direct person if they're the one delivering the message. Right? Could be a source of frustration. But just embrace it, right? And if you're thinking about and understanding that there are different styles, then it goes a long way. And then you got to remember, again, it depends on your context. It might depend on the day, how you're feeling, right? How much energy you have. All kinds of things that go into this. So, but there's other thoughts.
You're talking about employees and coworkers, not management styles, right?
I mean, this can apply to management styles as well.
I don't mean it towards anyone, I'm saying that coming from a previous job, it's hard to be different. So, management styles in a management position, then,
Sure. Well, and your habits can impact the way you approach things. You were saying you learned to be more direct, right? Some of that have to do with being in a leadership role.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Right? Some of what you're talking about, maybe adjusting to not being in that leadership role and adjusting your style and the way you approach things. Yeah. So, and you can, not necessarily bad habits, but as managers, you can get used to being able to do that and people just go, okay. And then, but sometimes that's not the best approach, right? But it happens, especially when you've been with a team for a long time and you have a good relationship, and they're like, oh, he was just very direct. And I will say this as a manager, sometimes you have to be direct, because if you're a little nuanced or you give them too much information and not the right amount, you don't get what you intended, right? And then you're talking to them and you're like, hey, what happened here? Like, well, you told me to do this. And then they repeat it back to you and you're like, oh, I said too much or not enough, and you got exactly what you asked for, right? And so sometimes as a leader, you have to remember that too. So, but yeah, roles can impact the way you interact, this style you're using, and the habits that you get into. So, one more question for everybody, just something to think about. What would be the style of the district as a whole?
All of them.
That's not to say direct.
I don't know.
It's kind
Not
of,
sure, okay.
it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, we're also different. It's just like different backgrounds, different people. Like,
Okay.
It's what makes our team whole.
Is there room for all of this at the district?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
We're sort of in our mission statement of what our goals and what we're behind to protect the public.
Cool.
Like you mentioned, direct and reserve together, sometimes work in situations that have been into.
Okay, cool. All right. So we can sit, you can sit, stand, you don't have to stay with your group. We're gonna do this one more time. Listening or active listening is something that's really important to communication. But a lot of times when we're listening, what does that have to do with communication, right? It's all, people think communications, they think, let's put out a post, let's write a letter, let's say something. But this is often more important, is actually hearing that message. And so active listening is something that highly effective people have been doing for years, but probably like in the early 1900s, some psychologists and counselors really embraced this during therapy, right? Where you're having to hear what the person's telling you, hear what's in their mind, and then try to help them. And so you're giving them their full attention, right? So what's a big one here that we all struggle with? And if you say you don't, you're either
Being silent.
yeah, exactly. There you go. And if you say you don't, you're deceiving yourself, or you are really just probably an exception, you know, one of those rare people. That's
I was
okay.
not giving my full attention, what was that?
So, it's giving your full attention, making eye contact, looking at my audience, not my screen. And then this second one, you just listen to understand what they said. So you're just really trying to hear that message. Nothing going on in the brain except I want to understand what Valerie just told me. That's the only thing I want to do right now.
And sometimes they don't want an answer. That's sometimes tough too.
Yes, because you might be hearing something that you were naturally wanting to defend, but again, you're kind of clearing that mind, you just want to understand that message, right? So that's helpful. Paraphrase to confirm. Done well, this is fine. Done not so well can kind of be annoying. Done with sarcasm, definitely annoying, right? You know, oh, so what I'm hearing is, right? But what you're trying to do is say, hey, I heard you. I heard all that. I want to confirm that. And then we're going to keep that conversation going. And then you ask before you assume. Can you tell me more about that? Right? Before you draw that conclusion. So it's just a way of approaching listening. It's like being very present in the moment. right? No distractions, really talking to that individual, making that eye contact. This is impossible to do in anything but pretty much a one-on-one setting. You can probably do it in a crowd, but there's gonna be way too distractions. So again, this is often when you're having one of those conversations where you're probably giving some feedback or addressing something. You want to be actively listening as you're having the conversation. So, questions about that?
I do. So sometimes, and this happens to me often, so like listening to respond, it's not necessarily because I'm looking to fight with that person, but if you're having a long-winded explanation of something and something you like keyed in on, like, oh man, I'd like to address this before I forget about it or before the conversation goes so far that I've forgotten what my point was, how do you kind of interject in that kind of situation so that it doesn't get lost and your mind's not distracted the whole time about, I don't want to forget this crucial thing?
Politely say, I think I heard you say something really important,
Okay,
and I'd like us to focus on that, and then use your paraphrase
okay,
before they go down that road. And you can even politely say, hey, that sounds like it's really important to you in the conversation we're having. Let's address one thing at a time.
okay.
And we'll talk about that as well, how, especially when you're the one addressing or giving the feedback, one thing at a time. So you can't say you get 5 things, you can't give somebody a laundry list, right? And then expect them to do anything that probably shut down. But sometimes you just have to stop something. Wow, wait a minute, that sounds important. And you might want to recognize their emotion. So you might go in, based on your reaction, you seem passionate about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I perceive that as passionate, right?
Okay.
And always try to, again, when you're paraphrasing back, your perception, not, Joe, you're short, right? And I would just tell me something I don't know, right? Heard that my whole life. Right? So, make it about your perception, not about that individual.
Okay.
So, but yeah, no, good question. That's a tough one, right? Other questions about this? Okay. So keep those things in mind. This can be hard to do, but especially when you're in that situation where you're having a disagreement or maybe you're having to have a conversation that's not so comfortable, it's good. There are people that say this is the only way you should interact with people, and I'm like, and I think you would be one tired individual if this is the only way you listen to people. Because it takes a lot to hone in and really do this. But it's a good set of tools. All right, so giving and receiving feedback. I'm just going to kind of touch on some of these. Be specific about the behavior, not their personality, right? That's an important one. I told you that your level of expression was appropriate from what I had seen, right? The behavior, and that you are warm and that you smile. Now, did I do one thing at a time? No. But I did that in behavioral terms. Did I say you have a warm personality? No. I perceive you as warm, right? So that's one way you give feedback. So, sorry, I didn't mean to call you out of that one. That was what I was trying to do. Explain the impact. Why are we talking about this, right? When you didn't de-escalate the conflict with that upset resident, it caused everybody problems, right? And now we have the news out here, the trucks, we're under a lot more scrutiny, our jobs are all harder, right? But it's something that they did, and why did it matter? That one, y'all know that one now. Right sign, right place, not in public. And again, one issue at a time. You can't pile on, you did 4 things wrong here. So you're coaching a baseball player, right? And they make an unforced error. And then not only that, so they drop the ball and then they kick it. And then they run into the other fielder who's trying to get to it. You don't tell them all 3 things. You maybe start with the unforced error, right? And then talk and give them, hey, why did that matter? In the right place, in the right time. And then help them to fix that part. And then you can talk about kicking the ball in the wrong direction and then also not being mindful of the other fielder and making it worse. But again, that would be 3 different things you talk about. And then even though you might do that, probably you're just going to want to do one and let them learn from that, unless the other 2 have to be addressed. Pick the most important thing, right? And that's not on the board. So if you've got multiple issues and you've got to address them with that individual, pick that one that's really critical and try to get some movement and agreement and consensus. Oh yeah, okay, I see that, and I do want to change that, and I agree we need to do something later before you go to the next one. Right? Just keep that in mind. But again, if you don't tackle them one at a time, you get on somebody and tell them they've done 3 different things, or just, you think I'm a horrible person, or what do I do with all that? And they just shut down. Right? So the idea is to keep things open, right? And again, focus on behavior. Oh, and this one's a struggle. Everybody struggles with this a little bit. Again, listen, right? Maybe take that style where you're thinking it through before you react, right? So use the styles. Maybe not the first thing that comes to mind. Hear the whole thing, right? So again, you're actively listening to this feedback. You're not thinking about how to explain the whole thing. But we did talk about maybe you have to say, hey, wait a minute. We need to stop with the unforced error, right? I need, you told me, let's work on that. Right? So there's hope there. Give me the example, right? So if somebody gives you some vague, you're not doing a good job with your service calls. Is that helpful? You're not doing a good job with your service calls. Right? So what would be helpful? Give me an example.
With what?
Yeah. So what would be a specific example?
You're not looking around the person's yard, you're just showing up, knocking on the door and leaving.
Or we're going to, for example, I've had one guy done a while back, going and taking dip sample, and instead of looking at, because you got some of the mosquitoes be so small, just look at it and dump it out. Examine it.
Okay.
Well, you get in a rush. You might miss something that you took your time to kind of surveillance there, and you kind of misunderstood something.
So 2 very concrete examples of different ways you could improve a service call. Much more helpful than you need to improve your service calls.
Yeah.
Right?
Give examples.
Right. Yeah. So, and in this case, you're going to ask them that. So when they're giving you that general thing, you're going to ask them, tell me more about it. So, and that works both ways. That whole specific example, when you're given it, you need to give examples. But when you're hearing it and you hear something vague, ask. It's not unreasonable. Right? You'll hear people say feedback is a gift. Generally, that's the person that just lays you out, right? Thanks, right? It can be useful. Generally, it's about a work thing. Doesn't mean anything. It's not a holistic evaluation of you as a person, right? So just always remember that, right? And if it's given well, when you receive it, you're going to get information that could help you to do your job or help you to be more effective. But they're not just saying, oh, you're just this horrible person. Because, you start with that, that's even worse than the piling. You're a horrible person, or, you're a horrible employee and then you give them a laundry list. That's not gonna work. So again, but keep that in mind, right? The other thing about feedback, even if it's not completely accurate, and maybe you disagree with it, probably some truth to it, right? So there's probably some room to improve. And again, tomorrow's another day, so just because you get something negative, it's not the end of the world, right? You can improve it. And if somebody's giving you feedback, that probably means 99% of the time that they care enough that they want you to improve, right? It's not necessarily just a beat up on. But thoughts on the giving and receiving feedback?
Well, as I look at that, everything up there makes me think this feedback is negative in nature. And there's also positive feedback and reinforcement and starting, even if it is not positive feedback, you have to address an issue. I always feel like it's best to start with something positive and not jump straight to the negative.
Ooh, okay. As long as you separate them, but don't sandwich the two together. And then, because there's a tendency to do that. You're great at this, bad at this, but you're good at this. And that's like the feedback, the negative feedback sandwich. You've got two positives and in the middle. It kind of breaks the rules of one thing at a time, right? Find to set up, hey, here's everything you're doing well, right? And then set up, here are the, give them all the positive, and then here's where you need to improve, right? But don't sandwich the two together to kind of make them feel good, because it's almost like build them up, break them down, build them up, break them down. They'll probably be there a little confused, right? Or they'll go like, what was more important? Or did my positive outweigh my negative, right? But you're right. But even with positive, you don't say you're warm and bubbly and everybody loves you, right? You would explain what about their behavior makes individuals gravitate to them, or how that has an impact. So it's not necessarily the personality, it's really about the behavior. And why it mattered. Again, positive, same thing. This one, public recognition can be okay when it's positive, and sometimes we do that on purpose. We have recognition, like events, where we recognize people for doing really good work. So that one, not necessarily with the positive, but again, the one issue at a time. So even if you're going to give them 10 great things they did, explain each one of them word by word. But you're right. This is, we're focusing on those uncomfortable negative situations.
I think it depends on who's giving it to you also, is how you receive it.
Sure. Some of this can apply though when you are getting the message to, right? Go ahead, hear everything they're going to say, even if it's positive. You're probably not going to become defensive, but you want to hear the whole thing and then react based on the totality of what they told you, not just that first part, right? And then if it's positive, but you're not sure exactly why it was positive, you still want to maybe ask for those examples so that you can keep doing it, right? And then on this part, then you're probably not worried about, oh, wow, I didn't do great. It's really in there doing well. It was good, positive feedback. But no, really good point, right? But a lot of this still applies even when it's positive. All right. We are going to stand up again. So, we're all going to move to our corresponding place in the room based on when we were born. So, what generation? So, first thing, does anybody, not based on, identify with a different generation more than their generation that they've been told they were part of based on their birth year?
I kind of follow, I feel like I follow between like millennial and Gen X, like a mix of the two.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody else feel like maybe there could be a combination of two?
Yeah.
Sam?
Gen Z and millennials.
Okay.
For hybrids.
Like hybrid mosquitoes, right? Okay, so maybe there's a reason for that because these are broad years, right? And so some of the things, the theory behind your generation explaining your behavior or how you show up or your attitudes has to do with you had common experiences that happened during a time period and those shaped who you are as an individual. But here's the thing, there's always going to be some overlap, right? So some of those events and how they influenced those years could overlap generations, right? And then like the millennial Gen Z. So are you close to being on that border of 96, 97?
Yeah, I'm 97, so.
So yeah, so you're right there. So kind of, it can be a mix, right, of influence. But again, the idea is that certain things happen or you were born in a certain time frame and that really shapes how you show up and shapes your experience. And then you carry those experiences with you throughout your lifetime. Anybody feel like that their generation totally does not fit with who they are? Yeah, I'm getting a little bit.
Like, kinda. I don't know, I feel like more people my age are more reserved and less social. I feel like.
You think that's because of COVID?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but again, that's kind of the theory of why your generation might shape your behavior. COVID was a big event. But for some people, that was an event in their formative years, right? So where others, we were like, we had all this other experience. And so, yeah, and it was a big event for everybody. And that's like not even a once in a generation, that's like a, once in multi-generation event. But those kind of things can shape some of your preferences, some of your styles, some of the ways that you want to interact.
Different culture fits.
Sure. Yes, exactly. Like, and you'll see a lot of this, you'll see on social media, like the Generation X, like, what's wrong with us? Well, we were watching a space shuttle go up, it exploded, and the teacher said, oh, that was horrible, all those people died. Turn the TV off, let's do some math. No counseling, no talking about it, no, ooh, you just saw something horrible. That was just the way things were, right? I mean, and that's kind of what probably happened to some of the Generation Xers. You were literally watching it in class, and it exploded, and it was like, well, we don't need to process that emotionally or anything like that. We're just moving on with our day, right? And so they'll say that's why we're, kind of pragmatic, skeptical, jaded. Is it true? Maybe. And you'll hear things like that. The different generations. Well, we didn't do that back in my day. That's a big one for the boomers. They love that one. Sorry. Yeah, our boomers. We didn't do that in our day, and you don't need to do that either. What's all this feeling stuff, right? Why do we have to talk about it? Right? It's true, right? Maybe. So, other thoughts on the whole generations?
I got the boom generation as a mental a little bit of each, but
Yeah.
more into the baby boom, but then getting bits and pieces of the other two.
Yeah. So, are you close to being kind of on the cusp of the two generation breaks?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because think about this. 64 and 65. That's a year.
Like
You're saying that this time period would have affected this generation this way and this one. So it's definitely not a precise gauge, right? So.
Like I was teenagers in the Generation X, and then I was getting into my late teens, early 20s in the 81s.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. We can all sit back down. Thank you for getting up. It's good to get people moving. assigned to each generations depending on whose theory of generations it is. You'll see different names. Sometimes millennials will be called Gen Y, Gen Z. There's probably starting to talk about the generation behind Gen Z. Everybody seems to be concerned about generations as they get into the workforce for whatever reason. That's just, so this is one way to explain differences in behavior. And some of it can be accurate and it can be useful. But
There's a big technology camp.
our technology gaps, and interestingly too. So let's say,
You know, you get the startup of Windows.
right, also different depending, and this is where some of this doesn't always apply. Just because you're Generation X doesn't mean you all experience the technological changes in the same way.
Some of these guys don't know what AOL.
Even within a generation, you have different experiences depending on your background. So you might have people in Generation X that grew up with a PC in their home. They had them, more than likely had them at school, maybe not at school, depending on where you went to school, where you grew up. And then had them in the home, to where some people in that same generation, first time they experienced a PC, they went to work, right? Or went to school, and there was never one in the home. Or the first time they had one in the home is when they went out and bought it for themselves, right? So it's not like the parents had it when they were, so they weren't using it when they were 5, right? They're using it when they were 20-something. So you can have different experiences within those generations. So some things you might can explain, but there are other things that might explain that behavior just as well, or if not better, right? So our life stage, right? If you're 45, 3 kids at home, and the other person's 25, fresh out of school, same generation, I think their priorities are a little different.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Okay. So let's say the 25-year-old has 3 children at home, right? Just like the 45-year-old. Then maybe those priorities may be a little closer together.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean so there's something there, life stage. And the children part is just one example. So you might have some folks, you go straight out of high school, straight into a career. Some folks go to college. Some folks go to graduate school after college. So you might be in various life stages and be at different ages, right? Or the same age, but different life stages. You might have somebody just out of school, just finished that master's degree, and somebody that's been working for 10 years. Maybe they're in a different life stage. Probably the person that's been working for 10 years might already have a house, might already have children, to where the person that went to school that whole time, maybe they're just in that, I'm finally becoming an adult kind of stage. So just one thing that you could consider, right? That's an important one though, because depending on where you are in your life stage, that might impact things like, getting to work 15 minutes early. Got to drop 3 kids, get 3 kids onto the bus, not necessarily drop them off. Might be hard to get there 15 minutes early. Right? Just one example. And that can apply to men or women, right? Because maybe it's the dad that's taking the kids to school. Willingness to stay late, right? Again, life stage, right? But you might have 2 people that are totally on the same page. One person, their life stage is, hey man, I want to do my 80 skate, I want to do a good job, but I don't want to work overtime. And you might have another person, different life stage, still same mentality. I've got 3 kids, they're going to be home, I gotta get home, I got stuff to do. But those are definitely important to consider. Next one, experience level. So you'll hear, oh, these Gen Y or, Gen X, they're gonna do this and that, and they're asking a lot of questions, and, all this, they're challenging everything we do. Maybe it has nothing to do with their generation, maybe they're really just trying to learn the job. That might be a different way to explain, so it's that experience level. Again, life stage experience level, they kind of go hand in hand a little bit. Personality is a big one. So a lot of what we've talked about today, people have some natural tendencies, right? So, and within any generation, you're gonna have people that are expressives and naturally wanna talk, and people that are more introverted, right? That would be one continuum. There are people that are gonna be more detail oriented, right? That's really kind of attribute that to a generation. Probably attribute a little bit of that to their personality, though, right? Your personality can kind of drive how much detail you pay attention to. So, personality can come into play. And then the work context, what's the environment and how well is that person fitting? So here, there's really just other ways to think about differences, right? And things to consider. But then what we want to get back to is that whole, you consider the whole person, you also have a job to do, you also have the same expectation. But this might explain some of the things that might be going on at work. And it's giving them that benefit of the doubt and giving them that grace, right? So before you give them the feedback, you might consider some of the other things that are driving that behavior. Because we're complex people, right? But these are just other ways to think about it. The generations at play, there are some very real things going on there. But some of it might really have to do more with life stage and experience level than just being marked by a certain generation, if that makes sense. But thoughts on this? Does all of this provide a better picture of work behavior, or does the generation stuff get it right? I mean,
Just more, I think it's more spot on, like you said.
Yeah, like space, one generation.
yeah.
If you have a 45-year-old with 3 kids and a 25-year-old with 3 kids, that 25-year-old is probably going to be more likely to show up every day because they are in a different life stage. They're like struggle bus at that point in their life, where the 45-year-olds had a whole long time to establish a life.
Yeah.
Well,
There's a lot of other things going on. But the generation thing is a real phenomenon. We do have certain things that we were influenced by the era in which we were growing up and developing. So that's why I guess they start thinking about it when they come to work. But it's the stuff that was happening from the time you were, 1 to about 20, right? It's just another way to think about your coworkers. Other thoughts on this? Thoughts on how maybe a generation might intersect with one of these things?
History has a way of repeating itself.
Okay. Tell me more.
See?
Go ahead.
Well, take the 45-year-old. You got kids at homes. Maybe they're at some point, maybe they think, maybe I should have did something different. I could have did something different, and now they're at a different stage of the point now. It's like, I wish I would have did this back when I was younger, so now I'm going through a whole crisis situation. And they could have learned from their parents, saying, hey, my parents did this, now I'm following the same suits, and now I'm following the same traits as my father, my grandmother, my sister.
Yeah. And that can be a very real phenomenon. That's not a generational thing, that's more of a socioeconomic background and the way you grew up within that generation. But all of that is a very salient driver, right? The other thing, if you look at these two, okay, this kind of makes some definitive statements. You're a boomer, so you do this. you're a millennial, so you're this, right? This room leaves a lot of room to grow, right? And to change and to improve. So while useful to maybe understand some of the behavior, and what are you gonna do with this to help somebody learn and grow, overcome that, right? Other than say, just because you're great at technology doesn't mean that you can be impatient with me for not being great at technology, right? I mean, but only so much you can do. There's a lot that you can consider here, and this leaves a lot of room for the person to grow, right, and change and improve. And so, you know, to me, it's a bit more useful, and it's a more of a whole person outlook, right? Other thoughts on all of this information?
Understanding their generation might help figure out like how to motivate that type of person, because every generation has their own thing that they key in on more than the other.
Yeah, I mean, it can be useful in some contexts, but then you might often, but you could miss a mark if somebody maybe doesn't fit the mold of that generation, right? And that's kind of the hard part. But no, it has some uses like marketing, for instance, communicating, like macro communication, definitely useful because you develop communication preferences and brand preferences kind of in those formative years, and you kind of tend to keep state. Right? So,
along in the advancements in the technologies that we have today versus you have to get out, pass out flyers so know what's going on. Now you just look at anything's instant.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and like, you know, you get a flyer in your car. I mean, who does that? But,
What a waste of paper.
yeah. Well, but, all right, so there might be somebody from the greatest generation. They're like, oh, cool.
Right?
To where, and they don't think about the waste of paper. But that was such a Z millennial X for sure. That's a waste of paper, right? Good. So different ways to understand your coworker, consider, you know, maybe what's going on, ways to work together. So, what are some of the strengths that different generations can bring following that generation? So, we're not here to bash anybody, right? So I shouldn't have said that generation that digs the flyers, right? That was not nice.
It's true.
It might have been true, but I was a little sarcastic when I said it. So, I imagine my mom or dad, oh, did you see this flyer? Right? So what are some of the things that having different generations in the workforce, how is that beneficial?
Technology, for sure.
Okay. A little more than just technology.
When they got the experience, this person's, look at the age difference, this person who's 60s, 70s, I can learn, as a younger person, I can learn from them, they have more experience, life experience than me, and I can look up to that person and say, hey, look, you know.
And vice versa with the younger generation, you can also, well, I don't understand why you folks are doing this. And they can elaborate on, well, this is why. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know, all right, I'm good with it. Or not.
So, all right, so kind of one of my follow-ups, think about a teammate that works differently than you. And you said, what do they see that you might miss, right? So could you give me an example of that?
A teammate that I work with
Or just, where you were talking about how you might do something differently and how it's beneficial.
well, most of the people that I've gone outside of my duty parameters with the facility's needs in question, some are a bit younger than me, and they go about their route or whatever, or they're steps they take during the day a little differently than I would take them. And I think that it's, like you said, it's how they were raised, what they're thinking, and then how they associate that with their duties through the day compared to the way I was raised and how I think in my duties of the day. So that's one thing that you can go with that.
I think I have a good one. Okay. As a person in Gen Z, I'm very GPS dependent. Like, it's a little embarrassing, I'm not gonna lie.
No, it's all right.
But if anybody sees me pull up a GPS before I go home from work, no, you didn't see that. But I think in the job, when I've gone through the routes with everybody, because most of everybody, except for one person, is older than me, I think it's helped that you guys like know how to get places without GPS. Like you'd be like, oh, this is this landmark, or you turn here, or this is the street. And I'm not used to paying attention to street names because I just go wherever the tiny screen tells me. And I think that it's like a different approach to finding traps and stuff.
I was gonna actually kind of maybe point that out, some of the differences. Like, you might memorize your route and just drive. And they might use GPS guidance, right, to get them around, right? Or if you're going somewhere new in the area, you're gonna use GPS, you're gonna go, oh, I just kind of know how to get there, right? So, I mean, that's a very, both get the job done.
Well, I always find here, if we need to know where something's at, we ask Norman. He can tell you every street in this county.
Some people are really good.
He's great at it.
I'm not where don't even go out of the house.
He knows where every mosquito is in this county.
So, I mean, all right, so what's the benefit of being able to do that both ways?
Well, you learn something from it. You can take something away from it.
Yeah. I mean,
You're versatile. I mean, you can use different techniques to accomplish the same thing, so you're more flexible to try new things or do a different route, or you can maybe find efficiency in it if you know.
Your phone's down.
yeah.
That's true.
All right, the phone breaks.
Now you need to look at the sun and the way the wind is blowing, and you'll get there.
On the flip side, you can know the area. What can GPS do for somebody that knows the fastest way to get there that they can't do for themselves?
Traffic.
Yeah.
There you go. Right. So, probably useful to know both. So, full confession, I made myself get here today without the aid of navigation just to make sure that I could. Right? It's not hard. There's like literally 2 turns, 3 turns. I mean, it's nothing. But dependence.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to miss my turn.
Yeah.
So I miss my turn, and I go to 331, and kind of back here, and so I would get here, but the GPS knows the better route. But then you start becoming dependent, right?
There's some places that we travel to where the self-service is not great. So communication is key.
Yeah.
There's areas that we travel to, we let our supervisor know, and hey, look, I just got to this area, want to be out of contact range for a little bit, and contact them as soon as you leave, so they can, at 5 o'clock, then they go look for you.
I mean, there. And that's important stuff too. I mean, sometimes you gotta let folks know, you're not gonna reach me because I'm gonna be somewhere where there's no cell service. Other things though.
You could team someone up, right? So some of the older generations that aren't as technology savvy, but they're more production driven or want to do a good job, they sometimes work well with people that are younger because they're really technology driven and they understand how to operate all the stuff that we use. So they can teach them how to use the equipment, whereas the person that's more motivated to get stuff done can show them shortcuts and tricks to be more efficient.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of things too that you learn from experience, and you learn how to do stuff by working. And even though you could YouTube it and have somebody explain, or a nice person, guy, lady, explain how to do something, the person that's done it for years is still gonna be able to do it faster and know some other things that they're probably not gonna explain to you on YouTube, right? Because YouTube is worried more about accuracy, probably being entertaining to get more hits. I mean, sorry, that's what they're doing. And there's just certain things that they're just not gonna capture. And then even, and you all know this if you ever trained someone, sometimes somebody will stop you and go, what did you just do? I'll be like, oh, well, I just looked at those statistics and knew that there was a problem. Well, explain that. Well, and then you have to stop and explain it to where, and this was just something that I did one day, and we were looking at an output of statistics, and I just could look at the number and know that something was wrong, and I just flagged the item. So this item is problematic on a test. And the person, how the hell did you know that that was problematic? And I'm like, just by the range of the statistics. And so I had to stop and explain it to you. There are all kinds of things that people do, and until somebody asks them to explain it or show them, they just do it, and it's natural to them. And you know, it's those people often like, I mean, I have a friend, he's just really good at carpentry, anything like that. And you have to stop and ask him, and then he'll go, oh yeah, I guess that does make sense, but he just knows how to do it. Right. And he'll also watch you do something and go, man, you're just, let me finish you right now. So he can look at somebody else doing it, and he can see it wrong, but when he's doing it, it's just kind of natural. But all of those things come into play with generations, and we learn to do things differently. And oftentimes the other thing is, it's backup. GPS breaks, right? Or you have a big traffic jam. And so the knowledge of the area is useful, but it's also useful in traffic. So it's two things. Other things that are helpful, having multiple generations.
Just passing down knowledge. The older generations have more knowledge to pass down to younger people, and so just life experience, like someone mentioned earlier, or job experience, or whatever it is, just and not in like a rude kind of a way, but just generally they've just had more time to gather knowledge.
Anything on the flip side of that? On the, yes, you can pass the knowledge on, what does that new person, younger generation bring?
Fresh perspective.
Yeah, I often find, oh, you're good. I often find every time I work with new people or even when I used to teach, just get input from students, things you take for granted, you see every day, you do things the same way every day. You suddenly see it from a different view and a different way of doing things, and it can totally reinvent the whole thing, improve it, or make it more exciting. It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's beneficial, having those multiple perspectives. Right? Yeah. So, right. Other props on the values. Right. There are a few props. The institutional knowledge and field experience, right? On the flip side, you have technology, what we'll call fluency and digital tools. So you're going to have different comfort levels and different levels of proficiency with the tools. So you can all teach each other ways to use different tools. You know, the adaptability. And that's just, you know, about relationships. But that one can be useful. Just think about this as you need to serve the entire community. You need the perspectives of multiple generations or multiple perspectives, right? Mm-hmm. So like, we were joking about the flyers, right? But then probably those of us, even, you know, I'm joking about the flyers. How do I reach the millennials and Gen Z? What's the best way to communicate with them? I don't know, right? Probably don't, right? So, but somebody from that generation, hey, dude, you're, they're probably go, hey, you're doing that like a grandpa or whatever.
What could be a way to advertise? Hey, I saw this on the radio, I heard this on the radio, I've seen this on a TV program, kind of things.
Yeah. But like, if you wanted to reach somebody your age, would you advertise on network TV?
No.
I'm gonna be real, I couldn't, none of my friends have cable.
Yeah,
so
nobody already has cable. My parents did.
Yeah. Cut the cord, man.
My mom still has cable. Cable TV is cool.
Yeah, I mean, depending on on the one you want. Yeah.
I had a plug-in telephone till last year. I like to talk and not worry about my battery dying. I'm just saying.
She's got a really good point. I mean, we used to talk for hours and hours on a recorded phone, and you didn't have, I mean, the only thing you had to worry about was somebody else listening to you.
Oh, yeah.
That was the hard part.
Oh, yeah.
But then when you got AOL, it kicked you off.
When you were like a young teenager before you had a car and could go date or had access to a car and go date, like, you know, one of your metrics of how much you and your girl liked each other was how long y'all talk on the phone. So, you know, that's a big deal because it was not as easy as walking around with a cell phone. You had to be courted and I mean, think about this. Remember when, like, not everybody had a phone, you had one phone?
Yep.
Shared?
It was in the kitchen.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What did you do if you got lost?
So
Call
anyway,
your mom.
For directions.
You didn't know who you were talking to until you talked to them.
So, but all of those things shape who we are, but yet we've adapted. Because it's interesting, because, you know, like, must be something great about cell phones, because like, if you look, cuts across the generations, right? And the only people we're trying to limit are small children, right? People are thinking, maybe we wait to give them the phone, right? Because once you got it, you know, you're part of that club and you never go away. But you look, almost all generations, they're all got a smartphone.
But that speaks volumes too about different generations starting businesses. Because you got these young ones going on TikTok and their businesses are just blowing up.
Yeah.
And then you have, you know, grandma and grandpa at my age and up that, and I actually am a grandma, that, you know, don't do that. So
Sure.
it would be a different way.
There's also some comfort level there, like some generations are like totally cool. Hey, I'm gonna go and promote my new business on Instagram, TikTok, and I'm gonna do that, and I'm cool with it. And some of us are like, man, I don't wanna let the whole world watch my business fail, like. So no, and so, but see, I'm an Xer, right? And so, you know, where they're like, hey, it's cool, you know, get out there, put yourself out there, right?
It's less daunting as you get older to learn something new.
But having those multiple generations, if you're gonna have a relationship with your community, you've gotta be able to reach people in different ways, so you need those perspectives. And then you've got those fresh perspectives on all the problems, right? Oh wait. And then mentoring in both directions, and I want to kind of go into that. Everybody always thinks of mentoring as the experienced employee shares their advanced level of skills, their institutional knowledge, and that's great. This can work in reverse, right? They might share a new way of doing things, right? So even if you are great at your craft, maybe you don't know that there are digital tools that can make you even better, right? Or make your job easier. And so that new perspective, it's kind of a reverse mentoring. You know, they have the judgment. They have the fresh perspective, right? Kind of the stuff I'm talking about, how do you reach a different generation that you're not familiar with? Or how do you meet people where they are? Again, they might understand community dynamics and expectations, or at least for their generation, that you're kind of like, I didn't know. But this can work both ways, right? But really, it's allowing both individuals, no matter what the generation is, right, to share information back and forth, right, and to value one another. And you'll hear a lot of conflict around this, right? Or you'll hear about it. But I think in reality, if you're listening to one another, respecting one another, and valuing one another, this can work really well. And a lot of that conflict just can go away. And it becomes a bonus, right? You get those multiple perspectives. Thoughts on this? Are some of the culture things we talked about, the positive culture, aspects of culture, are they necessary for this to happen? Yeah, I mean, so you've got to have a really good, strong culture where things are positive for this type of relationship to happen. And even if it is just a traditional way, right, as I talked about, withholding knowledge. If you have an unhealthy work culture, even just your traditional mentoring may not happen. Because the person that could share all of this, they have no reason to do so. More work, right? Every day, I gotta teach Joe, that's more work. Do I get more pay? No. Does anybody recognize me for it? No. Is there any incentive for me to do it? So think about that. You really gotta have that healthy culture for this employee, the traditional employee. And then definitely have that reverse and have folks with open minds going, hey, I can learn something too. But it really should be a two-way street, right? And so then that whole argument, well, it's a lot of work for me to teach this person. Well, but you're gonna learn a lot too.
I think that goes to the energy and adaptability, right? So a new person, whether they're young or just new, has that new, fresh energy, like, hey, I just started here, they're excited, they're learning all kinds of stuff, and that person has been there for 10 years, they've already been through all that, they've already seen it all, they're not gonna be as energetic and motivated about the job as a new person sometimes.
Yeah. Or, hey, wow, I'm glad you actually raised that again. We've been trying to get that fixed for 10 years and I finally listened, right? You know, but you never know, it might be, it wasn't they finally listened, it got raised one more time. And it's like, oh, but we had the budget to fix it now, right? So it's not always that they're listening to that new perspective, but again, they're gonna keep trying, or they come up with a more cost-effective way to fix it. Right? So other thoughts on this? Good, bad, and different?
Well, what's good about this is some of the senior, not necessarily senior age or different generation, but senior employees and the leaders. I really appreciate the stories or the experiences that they share with me because they've been in this business for as long as they've been. I've been in a completely different business and I want to become better at what I do in this business. So that means a lot to me. And it's not because they're older or younger or anything else. I mean, it's because they have the knowledge that will help me do my job better.
Yeah. And, you know, here, there's also a kind of a two-way street I just thought of. Like, if you've been working for a while, you understand the culture of Walton County and how things work here, right? And there's a culture, and it might be different depending on where you're from. And so a different generation could talk to you about the younger generation and how they have shaped that community. But the experienced individuals know, hey, that's just not going to fly here. You know, this is Walton County. Trust me, that's just not. We're not doing that yet, right? Or, you know, you're going to encounter challenges. Not to say you don't try to change, and you're always trying to be better. But again, a lot of times they're also going to be able to say, well, you've got a great idea. Let me explain to you the best way to make that happen.
Right? Really direct example of that. So you have someone who's been here for many years, they've worked in a zone for many years, they've dipped this source of water 10,000 times and never found anything. They know that there's nothing going to be there. They're riding around with a new person and they're like, well, hey, we need to stop and check that. Well, no, we don't. I know there's nothing in there. And they're going to drive on and go to the next spot, which is good that they have that knowledge, but it also kind of stifles that new person that's really still trying to learn the process and learn about new spots. And so that can potentially sometimes hold people back because you've already done it a million times. You know that you're not going to find anything there, but that person hasn't had that experience yet, and they're still excited to do that stuff. So,
well, there's also that mosquitoes evolve, right? They change, they adapt. So
right,
that might change too. The field judgment. You know, so it's possible that new person's kind of going, hey, let's check one more time. Oh, wow, mosquito got creative.
Yeah, it does that.
So, but yeah, I mean, But anyways, thoughts on this? Is this good food for thought, valuable? No?
Different career field, but when I used to hire paralegals, I would train them as operations, director of operations, but then I would have all the other paralegals have them sit with a different one, so they would get different, cross training, so different styles, and I didn't do paralegal anymore, so technology changed, and it was just better to do it that way, in my opinion.
Other thoughts? So I talked about this earlier, culture isn't really always about the policy. It's those daily behaviors that are what is allowed, and I said reinforced, but rewarded, recognized as positive. Things like how you greet somebody the first day of their job, right? And I put there, it's hard to undo that. So if it doesn't go well, sometimes it's hard to get past that initial first day, first week. How people respond. How are you giving them feedback? How are you talking about errors, mistakes? How do you treat somebody when the supervisor's not around, right? Are you hazing the new person? I'm not saying it occurs here, but that's a real phenomenon, right? Or teaching, right?
I've seen it, not here, but in my last career, a lot.
How do you treat the most junior member of the team? Firefighters are notorious hazers. Love them, but they have names. There's newbie and probie. Probie meaning you're on probation, just as kind of let's put this over your head. The year, you have to do everything we tell you. And for some fire department and firehouses, that's a very real phenomenon.
Normally, each job, last job, your probation, you're on 90 days probation. So if the company don't see that you're a good fit within that 90 days, they can have every right to say, hey, look, you're not a good fit.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. That's a positive form of probation. What I'm talking about is where you're kind of messing with them and saying, hey, you're on probation for the year, so you don't want any bad marks there.
And here, go wash my truck.
Or, you're buying the first pitcher of beer and the last pitcher of beer.
Right.
And every other pitcher of beer in between when we're out, right? That's that kind of stuff. No,
Yeah.
but again, it's how you're treating them when nobody's watching and how you're treating them as a team member. Conflict's okay, it's how you handle it, right? There's healthy forms of conflict. Conflict gets you to those new solutions that we talked about, trying something different. But honesty, respect, that kind of thing. Right? A lot of what we've already talked about. Last part, supervisors kind of multiply all of this because they reinforce what's okay and what's not. All right, we have 15 minutes. We're going to skip the scenarios for now. If we have time, we'll touch on them. Or actually, we can play Mythbusters, which is going to be probably a little bit more fun. Or we can do the scenarios. So, all hands for Mythbusters. I think we got a clear majority. We can touch the scenarios too. And I cut a few of these today, so there's not 10. And we'll just do them as a group. So, is this true, a myth, or depends?
False.
Yeah. They're listening failures, not speaking failures. The part about thinking about your next statement rather than listening. So it can break down on the receiving end. That's not to say that the person articulating the message, it's not important to get it right. But a lot of times this is where it breaks down. And as humans, we tend to naturally have our own filters and hear things in certain ways, right? I'm just gonna see that. All right.
Depends.
Okay. Tell me why it depends.
I wouldn't say true.
Please. Hmm?
I think it's true.
To be honest, my thought is they're different, right? Effective, not necessarily style preference. But that's a tough one, right? And a lot of that's in the eye of the beholder. And the direct is often like, that's your typical definition of professional, just straight to it, no fluff, no nuance, that kind of thing. So a tough one, tough to think about. But really, in a healthy workforce, there's room for multiple styles, right? Same generation?
Possibly.
Yeah. I had a whole slide that argued that, there's probably a bunch of other things that occur, right? Keep in mind here, just don't assume it's a generational thing. There might be something else there. Opportunities to go deeper.
False.
Yeah. It's about the way everybody shows up and treats each other. That's culture.
True.
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
Kind of could be that experience level, a different learning style. Generations part could come in there, right? And maybe it's okay, and certain generations are naturally going to ask more questions. Someone. There's a lot there. Right there.
That's true.
How are you texting?
Okay. You never have disagreements, you got a strong, healthy culture? Yeah. Probably a sign of something different, right?
True.
Yeah. So it's good to explore what might be driving that behavior, right? And even if you come to the conclusion, he's a Gen Xer, but here's how I'm gonna respond, and maybe it works, and that's fine. Or maybe it's, he's, tired, he has a new baby at home, and it's his week to get up every time it cries, right? And he's still showing up, all kinds of things going on. But it's how you respond, right? And it's using those effective feedback tools and actively listening, being respectful, doing that, giving feedback in private. And I ended up having 10 guys, I was tired last night because I cut a couple of these out because I didn't come. So they're here anyway. But the whole point of doing stuff like this is, I'm not testing you, right? It's a way to reinforce the key points. Try to make it fun. I was going to do this in a team environment and have you guys compete, but we had good discussion, so we kind of ran out of time.
true.
Here, we'll try scenario 4, well, actually, that's not gonna work, because you can see the answers. We'll just walk through it. Take a look at this scenario.
No issue. Still.
So what's the big issue here? There's actually 2, but what's?
The interrupting part. Yeah, the most acceptable B would be like the most accurate, in my opinion. Oh, the answer's right there.
And you have the silence that didn't get addressed, which is profound. So, again, supervisor behaviors, non-neutral. Let me try this one.
Let me try this out next week.
So, what's the big one here? What's the issue here? Before we get to the answer, what's the issue?
It's just the context.
Right. Without any kind of explanation, it just leaves a lot to think about all day long, like, oh man, did I do something wrong? Did they catch me doing something finally?
Then how can we prevent that?
Guilty conscience there.
Yeah, exactly. A little context would be nice.
Context, more info.
Right.
Right. And that's a tough one, right?
Or even just follow up and say, you're not in trouble or anything, I just need to talk to you about something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can start with
Right.
this is an issue, I just need to talk to you about something. Yeah, I
Yeah, right, why don't you talk to me now?
Actually,
Why don't I be in your office?
Yeah.
something like this in the end, where it really is almost. They've got messages like that, the intent was to get them to show up in the boss's office and then give like a little surprise party for them. It was all supposed to be good.
Be different scenario based.
Because the person's like, kind of getting anxious or whatever, and then it ended, all's well, it ends well. But it was almost like you wanted to say, I gotta ruin the surprise here, because this person is upset. So sometimes it can just be good intentions. So yeah, it's intent, right, and context costs nothing to add. So, issue,
Not
D,
sharing
D.
information. What?
Then it becomes a meeting.
yeah, I mean, it's that information reporting. And, you know, you could prevent that by the person not doing that. Right? One more. So issue.
Yeah.
What can we do different? What should happen next?
So C.
We have supervisor probably to step down. Cool. So we had time for all of that, and that must be so cool. I was worried about time. Well, great job, everybody. I really appreciate it. Fly through these again. Get to the end here. So one thing I would ask you guys to do is, based on the workshops that you have completed, and based on the day, what's one communication behavior that you could either start, stop, or continue to do back at the workplace? And you don't have to do all three. All three are effective ways to improve. So based on what you learned, think about what's something you might want to start doing, maybe something you want to stop doing, or something you're doing well and you want to continue, right? And it, again, not asking for a start, stop, and continue. Just one of the three, right? So think about it. Think about how you can apply some of this on what you learned today, or in one of the prior workshops. Make sense? Anybody want to argue that it's always, you gotta start something new to change? Sometimes it's stopping. Sometimes stopping is the best thing you can ever do. Or continuing good momentum. So, keep up your level of engagement. And the final two sessions are gonna be great. The individuals teaching them, or teaching them because they're experts, you're gonna have a lot of fun, and just keep that same energy and keep interacting. And it's been great working with you guys, so thank you. And again, keep up your participation with the next two sessions.
And this is not sarcasm.
I love sarcasm. I absolutely love.
Is that your next